Hi there, welcome to week 8. This week we're talking about qualitative field research. And you've read about the differences between quantitative and qualitative already this semester in course readings, but this week you're going to get real in-depth into the different types of qualitative research, the issues that are faced with qualitative research, validity and reliability issues in qualitative research, and which topics, this is probably the most important thing for you to be thinking about, which topics are best addressed through qualitative methodology. The kind of thing I wanted to talk with you about in our little face-to-face session here today is how important it is when you're deciding your methodology to make sure that you know what it is you want to study. A lot of people say, oh, I just want to do qualitative because it just makes more sense to me, it kind of flows better from my philosophy of science, but then they don't really know what questions that they can ask with that. They try to ask a quantitative question. So I want you to really think about, what do you want to know? What is the topic that you began writing about in your introduction? What kind of research questions is it leading you to? Your reading of the literature and the beginnings of writing the introduction and beginnings, I hope you've been working a little bit on the review of literature. The questions that you've identified, or the area where you think you're going, look at Babby's suggestions for the topics that lend themselves most easily to field research, to qualitative field research. Is what you want to know something that is the best fit for qualitative methodology? If it's not, you need to consider quantitative. A lot of people shy away from quantitative because maybe they don't feel comfortable with statistics, for example. Qualitative and quantitative are both equally difficult, equally labor-intensive, equally rigorous. There are just different ways of going about doing each part, and each part, the labor-intensive part, comes in different places for each. But there isn't one that's necessarily easier than the other, or that's better than the other. Where it comes down to whether one's a better fit or not is more in lines with the question that you're asking or what you want to find out. One way that I sort of think about quantitative versus qualitative, keeping in mind that I'm a quantitative researcher for the most part, so somebody might say, well, I don't agree with your definition there, but I'll just share with you a little way how it makes sense to me. When we're doing quantitative work, we're trying to generalize to a larger population. We're trying to get big samples. We're trying to make sure that we have measures that are reliable and valid and that we can generalize the findings to the general population. And with qualitative research, the issue isn't as much focused on generalizability, not so much the broad, but it's the deep. What is this? What is the meaning of this for this group of people? So think about that when you're trying to decide which way you're going to go with your methodology, because it will really, the methodology will inform your lit review, the research questions that you ask, etc. So think about what you want to ask and what is the best way to answer it. Is it quantitative or qualitative? And I think you'll have a good idea of the answer to that after this week, after you've read this chapter and you've read some of the articles. Qualitative research, to me, is so rich and so interesting to read and to conduct, because you really do find a lot of depth of information. Meanings become clearer. A lot of times qualitative research can then inform later qualitative work. So keep that in mind. It's really, really important that you identify the methodology that you will use based on what it is you want to find out. Which methodology is best suited to answer this question? It's the same with your theoretical perspective. Okay. Your book, as always, I feel does a very good job of explaining a lot of the different terms that are important in qualitative research. Things like participant observation, ethnography, case study, grounded theory, talking about, as I mentioned, which topics are sort of more best suited to qualitative field research as opposed to others. Qualitative interviewing, preparing to go into the field, conducting focus groups, All of these things, I think, are explained very well. Reliability and validity issues. So trust the book, read the book, and as I've suggested in previous weeks, read the chapter more than one time. In a class like this, it's sort of not enough to just read it one time and figure you have it. Read it more than one time so that you can continue to get additional meaning out of it and really cement the pieces that make the most sense to you. I had a guest speaker in one of my classes come this week talking about, in terms of literacy for young children, but I think it's applicable here too, so I'll share it with you. When you introduce a concept to children or you read a book to them for the first time, if you can equate it with a field of grass or hay or something, and you drive through it, and if you drive through it one time, bends the grass down a little bit, starting to make a pathway, but then if you don't revisit that, don't do it again, the grass pops back up, and pretty soon you can never tell that anybody's been there. But if you drive over it a few times, you permanently bend the grass, or maybe you wear the grass out there and there's a little dirt trail. Okay, so it's a little bit, the pathway there is a little more clear. Eventually, if you keep driving on it, the grass is gone, it becomes a dirt road, and then somebody comes along and throws gravel on it, and then pretty soon the city decides this is a thoroughfare, people are using this, I should put some asphalt down, and pretty soon you know it's a major thoroughfare, it's a highway, people are using it all the time. Well, for this class we want your brain to sort of become that highway. So the more you can read it, the more you can bend the grass, lay the dirt, put some cement on there, the better off you'll be. So read this stuff more than one time, and use the supplementary readings to help as well. This week you'll notice in the Research Cafe that I have 3 choices of articles for you. You only need to choose one. But I wanted to do that for you so you could see some different methodologies that people use for qualitative research and read how some of those were done and how they're reported, and pick one that sounds most interesting to you. But I definitely recommend looking at all of them and skimming all of them, whether you post this week or not, and regardless of which article you choose to post about. Yeah, have a look at all of them. We also have our midterm exam this session. You have all of spring break. This is sort of a 2-week session because I know that people will take a break over spring break, and I encourage you to do so. Don't let your grass pop back up, so to speak, but definitely give yourself some time to do something fun and let your brain relax for a little while. So we will have a midterm. It is due at the end of this session. Again, you can only attempt the midterm one time, so don't start it until you're ready to finish it, and move your mouse around a lot and stuff so you don't get locked out. Good luck on your midterm. Remember, remember, no multiple attempts, so make sure you're studied and you're prepared to get in there and do it. Remember that many of the questions you've seen before, 30 of them will be new to you, and 70 will be ones that from previous quizzes. So get those old quizzes and look them over and study them up, and if you missed some questions, go back and look them up, make sure you know it. All right, good luck. I'll see you online.